All right, well, it looks like it's not going live on Facebook for some reason. That is kind of... Anyways, welcome to Impact Radio. This is episode number 10, or actually it's episode number 11. We're going to do I wonder if they banned us on Facebook. We're going to do a interview tonight with John Atkinson. He's actually going to interview me, so I'm going to join his Zoom call here, and we're going to get started. Okay. Screen meetings. Just waiting to get in on the Zoom call here. Let's see. Hello?
Hey man, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
Alright. So, trying to understand this here. I've only been involved recently. You're in Norco, California? Where the heck is Norco at?
Southern California.
Oh, I'm now in Ventura. I was in Simi Valley.
It's in Riverside.
Okay. I don't know California all that well, but
Oh yeah.
I need to get you into more groups on Facebook. Thanks for joining the Circumcision Harms documentary group. You'll notice in that group I have an announcement that has a draft outline. So, by the way, I'm not recording it. I don't know if you got live or whatever on Facebook or YouTube for Jordan's.
Yeah, I went live on YouTube.
Okay, if you want, that's fine. I don't mind. I do these a little more structured. I have a list of talking points that are identified in the announcement in the group. And
okay, I didn't look at that at all. So
okay, you can pull it up, and that way you can see how I'm going to go through this structured wise, and all. And I usually just try to get things kind of set up with the person I'm interviewing with before I start recording. So what
was the group called again?
Circumcision Harms documentary. I think it's what it's going to end up being. It's a docu-series. I am putting all the interviews on YouTube raw, but my intention is to take kind of stripe them across all the videos and take pieces from each interview and stick them together under an outline. So I might have one docu-series piece that talks about the physical harms, and then another docu-series piece that talks about how it involves sexual partnerships, and then another one about psychological effects. And et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I might have to even break it up even more than that, because depending on how much material I gather.
Right. Yeah, that's what I heard on when you were talking with Jordan.
Okay.
You're working on, you do a lot of editing and stuff.
Yeah. Well, if you've looked at my TikTok account, you'll understand why it's kind of funny how things happened. I got Adobe Premiere. I'm forgetting the exact name of the Adobe tool, but it's a tool to edit videos, and we got it installed on our computer to help out the church that my wife works at for ever since the pandemic started.
Yeah.
Because I needed to be able to do videos online and everything like that. And that went on for a while, and now they're doing fully live things instead of recorded stuff. But I learned, I've already done some video editing before with the old version of YouTube and stuff like that, but I like, oh, this is fun. And hey, there's an opportunity here to fix up some videos for the internet. And then I came across TikTok and found out how it works. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is an excellent opportunity to get in front of people that wouldn't necessarily be looking to learn about this topic.
Yeah.
I kind of think of it like protesting out on the street, but I'm protesting on TikTok.
Yeah. I've never used TikTok, so I literally know nothing about it.
Yeah, TikTok, it's very simple. You can install the app, and it's designed for the easy flicking, your thumb across the screen function of mobile phones.
Yeah.
A video, you might want to watch it, you might not. If you don't want to watch it, you just flick your thumb and you're on to another video, right?
Right.
So I've had well over 1 million views of my videos. And,
that's crazy.
Hundreds and hundreds of videos I put together on there. And I primarily started with James Owen's Bonobo 3D videos on YouTube. I download them and edit them to get them into 1 minute segments and all that.
Yeah, because his YouTube doesn't get that many views, so that's crazy that you're just clipping his stuff.
My edited versions of his videos has gotten millions of views. So
yeah, that's crazy.
Pretty cool success. So yeah, I guess it came up in the tech community discussion, which I wasn't able to attend. I kind of got quiet for the past month or so, and the general autonomy stuff, because we just finished moving from Senior Valley to Ventura. I finished. We're still unpacking. As you can see, we've got a big pile of books that aren't even on the bookshelf yet.
Yeah, I know how that feels.
Yeah. So, so just as a heads up, as we go through this, you'll probably feel like you're repeating yourself some. Remember that it's going to get edited later on and broken up. So, yes, there's going to be some things. It's going to seem like I'm asking you the same question that we talked about before, or whatever, because or we talked about it in physical, but there's a psychological impact, the physical or whatever, and it'll come up again when we start talking about the psychological or something like that.
Okay.
Or the relationships, or whatever. So, yeah, it's just the way it is in order to try to make the docuseries the way I'm envisioning it.
Sure, I'll just let you lead, ask whatever questions, and then it'll be easy for me. Okay. I don't have to think about anything. I can just answer the questions.
Yeah, and I almost finished listening to your whole Intact Radio thing. I've been out for the past few hours delivering food, and I just sit there and listen to your YouTube, your live radio session there with Carter and a couple of others. I guess Jordan dialed in for a little bit there.
Yeah, Carter was the only one who really called in.
Yeah, and before we start recording, that reminds me. You talked a good bit about your friend that committed suicide, and he said it sounded like he committed suicide over being circumcised.
I mean, I feel like with anyone who commits suicide, it's really hard to just say one issue was the only reason they did it, right? But I feel like that it was a huge thing, and I feel like if he wasn't circumcised, that would not have happened. So I don't know if that makes.
He talked a lot about being. I prefer to call it preputial amputation. Being a preputial amputee before he committed suicide. So you don't know for sure whether that was it, but it sounds like it was definitely contributing factor.
No, it was a huge factor. Huge factor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that would be very interesting to see. You probably heard the name Jonathan Conte, right?
Yeah. It was similar to him, where it's like I wouldn't want to say Jonathan Conte committed suicide only because of circumcision, because I do think there's other issues going on, but I would say like that is the main issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I being an amputee myself, I can relate to the feelings of wanting to.
Right.
For myself, I want to redo. Damn it.
Yeah, exactly.
I want the last 50 years back with my previews.
Exactly.
So I've got to believe that it's a huge contributing factor, and there's been other
Absolutely.
men that committed suicide over the same thing. So Jonathan Conte definitely is not a unique case, totally unique case.
No.
Okay, well, let's get started then here. Recording. Hi, we have David Johnson, a preputial amputee or a circumcision victim like me, and we're going to go through another interview where we go through all the harms that we believe, or that David, in this case, believes has been inflicted on him, how he's been impacted by the fact that his prepuce has been removed from him as a child. So say hi, David.
Hello. Sorry, I was just shutting the door real quick. All right, I'm back. Hello. All right, let's get started.
Okay, so the first major section that we always cover on these interviews is the physical aspects.
Sure.
And, I bring this up because it's regularly brought up when like protesting or whatever, or complaining about it online. And it's like, well, why is it bad? Okay, well, here's why it's bad. Like, listen to these, all these men that have figured it out. It's myself. I've figured out by doing a lot of studying, asking intact men, talking to men that got cut later on in life and all that, how the normal penis works. So one of the first terms is acropostion. And if you look at one of my videos on YouTube, it goes way back with John Geischer from Doctors Opposing Circumcision making a presentation. One of the images that he shows on the screen at a baby fair is an image of a Greek statue showing the penis with the part of what you might consider the foreskin, rather than the overall prepuce that covers the entire gland, but just the part that hangs off at the end of the penis. And it's known to have features like allowing stuff out but not back in. So it acts like a sphincter.
Yeah.
And it does that through kind of some musculature in the skin that's often referred to as the dartos fascia. So from what I gathered, David, with you, I just finished listening to most of your intact radio session. You've had more than just your acropostion removed.
Yeah. It's complete foreskin removal.
Okay. Do you know what your coverage index is?
I mean, I started restoring maybe a year ago or so, but it was like at a 1. So now maybe it's like a 2 or a 3 at best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, you're making some progress.
Yeah.
For me, I know to use my mock penis here. I consider myself like having like a 0 to 1. So depending how the coloring is happening because it's been sitting in my pocket, so it's like deep blue in there. But this part is the inner mucosa, and then you've got your shaft skin here, right? And I still have my inner mucosa. And I think what happened was back then they would probably use the Mogan clamp to delve, like the plastic bell or the Gomco clamp. So I ended up keeping my inner mucosa. So I don't want to stretch that part. I want to stretch this part down here. And the tools aren't really good at doing that. I mean, the restoration tools, like you can try to grab that and pull on it to try to stretch this part. But what you're doing is, if you're just pulling up on that, you're also pulling up on your scrotum. So you're not really getting a whole lot of stretching there. You need to kind of do this kind of stretching, right?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask you what tool you're using for restoration?
The TLC
Tugger?
Yeah.
The Ron Moe invention?
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I love
he's cool.
watching his videos and the music that he's putting together.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. All right, so the next thing is sensitive skin. So based on what you've been talking about, I'm assuming that you do fully believe that what was removed is sensitive skin, that it did have lots of nerves. I'm not going to stick to specific numbers like 20,000 nerves or whatever. I don't care if it's only on our nerves. They were my nerves. They shouldn't have been removed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, well, like what I think, and also what my friend also noticed too, which I think most men do, is that the most sensitive part of your circumcised penis is the scar itself. Well, not the scar, but this tiny bit of leftover foreskin that's there. So that is the most sensitive part. So just logically, you can assume that the rest of it was also extremely sensitive. It's just from like firsthand experience, I guess you could say.
Yeah. For me, I think, do you have any idea what you were cut with, or was it with a bell method, or?
I actually have no idea.
Okay.
Honestly.
Do you know how much inner mucosa you have? Because I've seen guys with just like a very
just a very thin line.
Okay, so you were probably cut with some sort of bell method then.
Yeah, I don't know.
When you think about it, when they put a bell down over your glands and then they cut right at the base of the bell, then that leaves, and they're taking off all of that inner mucosa and outer shaft skin, so you end up with more shaft skin.
Right.
Rather than instead, with a Mogan clamp, what they're doing is they pull up on the foreskin and they try to clamp right on top, right above the glands, which sometimes with bad performers, they end up squeezing that clamp too low, and then that ends up cutting into the glands itself.
Yeah.
So what you might call it a botch. So for me, the frenular, because I do have my inner mucosa, I think my frenular area is what is my most sensitive area. So in that way, I consider myself lucky.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I have such a very, very tight cut. It causes other problems. I'll cover that as we go through this. So glands protection. So I'm assuming that since you're getting a little more coverage, your glands is covered a little more often. Maybe you're regaining some softness, or whatever.
They're much more sensitive now. Like I can't sleep without it on. Like I can't do anything without it on anymore. It's just it's very uncomfortable if I take it off at all, basically.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Someone else used the manhood, and he said that he wants to leave the manhood on all the time because
Yeah, I use that too when I'm not wearing the TLC.
Yeah, that scares me to even try the manhood myself because I don't want to become dependent on it. I mean, it's almost like becoming dependent on a drug.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's not it doesn't really like make your glands more pleasurable. It just kind of makes it more sensitive, I guess. But it does start to soften up at some point. But yeah, I think it would probably, if you took it off and just let the abrasion come back, it wouldn't take long for it to get back to the way it was before.
do you mind me asking how old you are?
I'm 28.
28?
Yeah.
So you haven't had as many years as I have for your glands to keratinize.
Yeah.
It does get worse as you get older.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how it happens at
Yeah.
a very slow rate. But... Okay, rolling mechanism. What are your thoughts about that?
The rolling mechanism?
Yeah.
I mean, it provides lube, I guess. As I've restored more, like it's more pleasurable when you have that rolling because it's just less friction. For me,
I often do it. Do this here properly. It's like I try to show this. I did another video too where I stuck a piece of a rubber glove on my finger, and then I doubled it up. I put some tape on the tip of my finger first, so that would act like the glands, and I stuck the whole thing on my finger, and then I doubled it up so it looked like kind of like a foreskin, and then I do this with it.
Yeah.
So like if you hold your fist and you try to just stick your finger in between your fists, it's really hard to get it in there. But when I put a little Vaseline on and then I doubled up that glove, it's like you can't keep it from going in. It slides in a lot easier, right?
Right.
And this kind of, because it's showing how it unrolls. That's the rolling mechanism part. That makes entry, especially the first entry,
right.
A whole lot easier because there's no you're taking away the friction. You're acting like a rolling bearing, right? It's just unrolling inside, whatever it is that you're going into with your penis. So.
Well, plus the other thing is when you're cut, especially really tight, when you get an erection, it can be very painful because there's no slack skin left. So that's another thing. That's what helps. Yeah. That's what helps with restoring too. Like even if you're not making like a ton of progress or you're not like getting full coverage, at least you can kind of reduce some of the pain because you can, even a little bit of extra slack skin can help reduce some of the pain.
Yeah, I cover that as we get down to the testes and pelvic floor a little bit too, about where the pain occurs if you have a tight cut. So the rolling mechanism is a little separate from the moisture lube part because the inner mucosa of the penis, it's like the inner mucosa of lots of body parts. There's stuff in there that creates secretions that keeps things moist.
Right.
So it's supposed to be moist, like maybe not as much as a vagina, but it does, it does keep things moist and smooth and soft inside. So you got the rolling mechanism on top of the lubrication. So you're adding lubrication to the act. And certain tax men could, attest to that too, about how it's valuable to have both of those for sexual activity. So I'm assuming you have no moisture or lube on your penis when you have an erection and you start having sexual activity.
No, I have to use coconut oil.
Yeah, that's good. Olive oil is one that I like.
Yeah.
Of course, you could give money to companies like KY Jelly for that. But.
Yeah, I don't like those companies at all. I don't like their products.
But I kind of wonder if they have any involvement in those who try to keep circumcision alive, because
Probably.
it could cut into their money, their profits if there are fewer men that need it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the frenulum, it sounds like your frenulum was ablated.
Yeah.
And I think when I was listening to you, the Intact Radio, you were saying that you were kind of identifying well with Carter Stenosis, that you think that there should be a lot more sensation there than you feel.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I feel bad for those that got cut with the bell methods. It's kind of funny to deal with some parents that will rave about all that they had. All that happens is this bell thing falls off, and it's great. It's done and over with, or whatever. It's like, do you understand what you did to your child?
Yeah, I'm not completely aware of all. Like, I didn't realize that different methods kept certain parts and didn't keep other parts. I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, I knew each one was
It hasn't been
different.
talked about a lot.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any videos actually compare the methods, even like to medical doctors or whatever, say, oh, well, you're a medical doctor, you're going to do circumcisions, and well, here's your options. You can do a gongo clamp, moga clamp, or plastic belt, or a shaving ring, or freehanded, or whatever. And here's the pros and cons of all of them. I haven't ever seen anything like that.
I don't think the doctors even know, really.
I don't think they do either. I think it's probably like the pharmaceutical companies. They probably have some representative go see them when they're in college or whatever, say, here, buy this gongo clamp and do your circumcisions that way. Here's how it works.
Yeah.
Rather than being taught by a teacher.
They probably just use whatever method that they learned in college or whatever. Just stick with that.
I was sent one. No, that's not it. Someone sent me a gongo clamp or two, and it's kind of in the shuffle somewhere from the move. And I've been wanting to make a video or two with it, but I have to find it again. So I probably will do another video that talks more about the differences and how it affects.
Yeah, that would be really interesting, because like you said, I don't think there's too much information about that out there.
Okay. The next thing is hairy shaft or scrotal webbing. Do you have that?
I have a little hair up on my shaft, but not too far up. So I don't know how. I don't know how much circumcision has affected that, or how normal that is. So yeah.
Is it pretty clear, the line between your scrotum and your shaft skin? Because for me, it's a pretty clear line.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. So the idea is
although when I am tugging, it does kind of pull up on the scrotal skin, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So your scrotal skin is going up onto your shaft.
Yeah.
I don't know if you look at porn at all, but I've watched enough to notice a clear difference between intact men and not, where the scrotum. You kind of have to sit there and look at it in detail and all that. And I'm at this point, I'm not looking at porn to get turned on. I'm looking at porn to try to understand, how things work.
Basic anatomy.
And I think very few men, or maybe even women, take the time to look at it from a scientific perspective.
Or doctors.
Because they're probably afraid of being called, I don't know, gay or
pervert or whatever.
Or perv or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
That actually really bothers me, like that type of attitude. It's just, I don't understand it. Like, it's like it's like you're scared of basic information, and I don't really get it. It's like there's nothing to be scared of. It's just, you know.
Yeah. There's this YouTuber called Caitlin V that talks about sex a lot. There's also another lady. She runs a channel called Sexplanations. But Caitlin V just put out one recently about how, red flags with your partner. And one of them was if your partner can't talk about sex in a mature way, then that's a red flag.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. So testes is the next thing. For me, my testes when I was younger, particularly in my teens and my 20s, when I get an erection, my testes would get pulled up because my scrotum is getting pulled up, right? My testes get drawn up inside my body, and things would get a little tight, and my testes would get squeezed just a little bit. It's almost like getting kicked in the nuts. I'm older now. Things are stretched out down there a little bit. I mean, it's normal, just like boobs, they kind of go with gravity. So I don't have that trouble so much anymore. But what about you?
Yeah, I would say similar to you. Like,
really?
Yeah, I think that's kind of normal. But
yeah, I've done a few interviews now, and it's very, some have and some don't.
Yeah.
So again, it depends on how you get cut, and it's also they might angle the cutting tool this way or whatever, and that might have a different effect on whether it affects your pelvic floor or whether it affects your scrotum.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy how it affects so far down, And I think it's just a little snip, but it's just every little thing will have permanent effects on it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's hard to know when you were cut as a child. It's really hard to know like what's what,
Okay, pelvic floor. Do you understand what I'm talking about with pelvic floor?
The PC muscle. Yeah.
Well, so for me, what happens, I guess we should keep it circumcised here. So if you look at medical diagrams that shows the corpus cavernosa, which is the part that fills up with blood, that corpus cavernosum goes all the way inside your body, all the way back to your anus. Right? And so it fills up with blood. And if the skin doesn't allow for your penis to go outside of your body properly, then the skin gets a little tight, and your penis goes up like this. Which it can be a little funny because I used to be able to. I think I probably still do it. I can control how my corpus callosum is filled up and relaxed, fill up and relax, kind of like a muscle. And I can make my penis like slap my belly.
Yeah.
But it's also very uncomfortable because it does this, and then your partner tries to do this or whatever,
and then it stretches your skin.
That gets uncomfortable. Yeah. Particularly right where it comes out of the body because it's doing a double angle thing.
Yeah.
So for you,
it doesn't pop up like that. It seems just straight. Yeah, it doesn't pop up. It doesn't. It's not. My skin is not tight enough to where it goes up in that angle. Yeah. I think, but.
Okay. Meowth Stenosis. Did you ever have any experience with that?
What is that exactly?
So it varies a little bit, but the meatus is where it's the very tip where the urine comes out.
Yeah.
Right? And it's very common for usual amputees, circumcised boys, to end up with this, where kind of like a skin bridge or the narrowing of that area occurs.
Yeah.
So it makes it harder for the urine to get out.
Right.
For me, I had a little skin bridge across, and that would cause my urine to spray like this.
When you were a kid or when you were a baby?
Yeah, when I think I was like 7 or 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
I do remember going to the doctor for this, and do remember the doctor doing just a little slice to fix it. wasn't really painful or anything. But I believe that I still have a certain level of Meowth Stenosis where the end is just closed up a little bit. So I get a little bit of a sharp feeling when I urinate right at the tip.
Yeah. No, I don't have that. I've never had that.
Okay. Skin bridges. You familiar with those?
It's where like the skin tries to reattach itself. Yeah.
Yeah, to the glands.
Yeah.
Because as you probably have learned by this point, that the inner mucosa is supposed to be attached to the glands during childhood.
Right. So your body tries to reattach, or sometimes it does, not all the time.
Just like a scar.
Yeah.
Right? Your body tries to repair itself, and you don't want that doing a repair because it repairs in the wrong way because it permanently reattaches to the glands. And then you have this skin going from your inner mucosa all up to your somewhere on your glands.
Yeah.
I've had like one guy talk about how he has to use a Q-tip to clean between his
skin bridge. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never had that. I feel like that happens more when they leave a little more skin on. There's like a little more skin to reattach itself to. I think if they cut it too tight, I don't think there's any skin left to even make a bridge. But I don't know. I literally.
Yeah. It's also depends on how well it's taken care of too, right? You're supposed to put Vaseline or whatever cream on.
That's true.
For so long.
That's true.
After the baby is cut or the child is cut or whatever.
Yeah.
Depending on the age. It's funny how a lot of people say, well, it's better to get done when you're a baby. It's like, well,
not really.
You have this extra problem when you get it done as a baby. You have to deal with this.
Because
you don't when you're an adult.
The parents can't watch the baby 24/7. I mean, they got to sleep, and it's like when it's your own body, you can kind of keep an eye on it all the time. So.
Yeah, for sure. And when it's your own body, you're most likely an adult, and you don't have your inner mucosa is already separated from the gland, so it doesn't have it.
Right.
So it's not you're not going to get a skin bridge as an adult. ED, erectile dysfunction.
Yeah, I think as a circumcised man, it's much harder to get an erection. It takes a lot more effort. And depending on some people, they can't even orgasm or anything because of their circumcision so bad.
I heard you talk about that.
Yeah.
Show.
So I guess it's just it all depends on your own body and stuff. But for me, I feel like it takes a little bit more effort than it should. Just because there's only very small portions that have the sensitivity to create that arousal. So and then also as you get older, it gets harder and harder. So, and that's what I talk about a lot too. Is a lot of the trauma and stuff of circumcision does not come up until you're more sexually active. It could be till your 20s or late 20s or early 30s before you really start to realize the value of it. So
and you have to be told, or you have to have it explained to you how. I was 35 before I even started looking into this. So that's when I became a dad of a boy, and it took me a dozen years of researching and I'm an introvert normally, and so I processed it internally quietly for myself. I just ask questions to try to understand things, learn a little bit more, and then kind of go back into myself and go through the stages of grief and all that. And it wasn't like I had to go through stages of grief once. I had to go through stages of grief over and over again because I kept learning more and more losses. And that's why I created this list of harms. And so hopefully we can just get it over with all at one time. Maybe, I don't know. I hate what some people call blackpilling men about this. Because I don't want to get all depressed and everything about their loss. But at the same time, if men don't complain, then this continues.
Yeah, I think my thoughts is that it's a really selfish act not to get educated. However traumatizing it is. Maybe it's better for you, but it's like you're continuing the suffering. So that's the way I look at it. But at the same time, you have to provide support for the people who are suffering from the trauma too. I think that's also important. So, yeah.
General botches. Do you feel that you were botched in any way?
I mean, I feel like I was cut really, really tight. It's kind of an interesting story with the doctor, but I won't go into it.
Well, we actually did talk about doctor-patient relationships down the way here, so I'm sure it'll come up then.
Yeah. There's a pretty funny story actually. So.
Okay, so the next section is about partners, and I understand you have a wife.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're heterosexual.
Yes.
So, have you and your wife talked about how it affects her?
Yeah, we're very open sexually and talk about everything. I trust her with everything. So, yeah. I mean, it depends on the woman, but I think women don't necessarily focus on the physical as much as men necessarily. They're more just emotionally, it's more important for them to be emotionally open with a man for their sexual life. Like that's more important than the physical. But
well, you know, they say the brain is the biggest sexual organ.
Yeah. So for she always just says, well, I think the foreskin is for the man, you know, not the woman. And so she tries to like not. No, I know what you're saying, but my point is that she tries to say like it's not up to me to decide, you know, what a man should have and not have. Like that should be their, like it's our responsibility to protect our sons and all that, like because that's our organ, right? Like I'm never gonna understand everything about the vagina. They're never gonna understand everything about the penis. So that's kind of the way she looks at it.
I've heard plenty of women talk about, you know, experiencing both.
Yeah.
You know, pros and cons of both.
Yeah, but me personally, I think it's better for the man and the woman. I think it would be much better for the woman. So not only does it bother me that I'm missing pleasure, but it bothers me that the potential that she's also missing pleasure too. That also bothers me. But luckily, it doesn't seem to affect her that much. So.
All right, so the next section is psychological. It sounds like from your talks on the radio with Intact Radio with Jordan that you do feel a certain level of trauma about this.
Yeah.
There's trauma not just from when you were cut, but there's also trauma from the discovery process about the loss.
Right. I think there's kind of I like to kind of separate it into two different categories. Like one, the first category is like the early onset PTSD, which I think needs to be studied a lot more. Like when you do when a newborn baby or early developed child is traumatized, it creates certain habits, behaviors, all sorts of problems that I think need to be researched more. And then there's the second part of it, was the conscious part of it, where you learn all the information and then you consciously are going through a lot of the trauma. So I kind of think there's two different sections that need to be dealt with, if that makes sense. And I think the early onset trauma is very hard, the most difficult to deal with, because you don't know what the trauma caused. Because, well, if you're older and you experience a traumatic event, you have a before and you have an after. But because a trauma happens so early, you feel that that's always been a part of you. So you don't know, well, is that just my personality? Is that just my brain? Is that just how I am? Or was that caused by this trauma? And that was a problem with my friend too. Like, he felt like he had a very intense feeling that a lot of his problems were caused by that. But because you can't logically know, you can't prove it, it's a very hard thing to deal with and cope with. So, and it's also hard for other people to understand when you're seeking help. So, I think there's
some men have reported, including myself, nightmares.
Yeah.
During childhood.
Yeah.
Did you have any of those that you think contributed?
I have nightmares now, but no, my childhood was seemingly normal. But when I hit puberty, that's when all hell just broke loose for me. Like, I had a ton of drug problems, just confidence problems, social problems.
I forgot to ask, when did you start learning about the loss?
So I had an uncircumcised friend growing up, a couple of them. So I knew their penis was different than mine, but I never really thought much of it. And growing up, I just thought I didn't think my penis was. I didn't know there was a scar there. Like, I didn't know that was a scar. I just thought it was normal. That's how it looks. And then maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I read the article where the doctors were doing MRIs on babies before and then after they were circumcised.
Yeah.
And then it showed the alteration of their brain chemistry. And then I was just like, I immediately knew, okay, well, that's wrong. Like, and I knew I went through that, and I knew that it probably had an effect on me, but I kind of just like brushed it under the rug. I didn't go into it much. And then about 3 years ago, my friend started calling me every day, and he's like, you got to watch, these videos, Bloodstained Men. You got to watch Eric Klopper's video.
Yeah.
And I told him, because I knew he was struggling with depression, I'm like, I know that it's wrong, but I don't think you should focus on it too much. But he was really adamant about it. So kind of just to like try to support him, I got into it, got more educated. And then as I got more educated, that kind of sparked my own anger and trauma and all that stuff. So that's kind of like how it all went down. And then from there, I got obsessed. I had to learn everything as much as I could about it, And then now I'm kind of to a place where I have to like purposely not expose myself to it too much, because I have to like balance my life out a bit. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to keep my mind off of this.
Yeah, me too. That's why I have to I have to have activities and stuff to get my mind off of it. Otherwise, it's just too much to deal with all the time.
And you were saying, I think in Touch Radio, like have someone to take care of, so you can focus on them for a while.
Yeah, I think that's important, because if you're only internalizing all of your own suffering and pain all the time, it kind of sucks you into this black hole where you have no joy, and that's when suicide starts to creep up on you, because there's just nothing to live for anymore. So I think trying to have healthy relationships, having animals, or anything that can help you give you purpose and meaning is important.
Yeah, I had a thought about that though, because my advocacy work, or activism, is a way of taking care of someone else.
True.
Doing activism isn't about me.
That's right.
It's about
the
next generation I'm trying to protect.
Right. Yeah. Well, what I'm talking about is your day-to-day internal trauma that you're going through. Yeah. Whereas, oftentimes when you deal with that trauma and you become healthier and more capable mentally, you'll do better in activist work, right? Because you'll be more prepared and mentally stable to educate people properly.
I personally go through that sometimes. In fact, I just had an episode earlier today, actually. I was thinking about autonomy. I think that everyone needs a certain level of autonomy in their lives, right? They need to be able to make their own decision about what they eat or what they wear or where they might live or whatever. Need to be able to have some choices. This is one choice that is taken away from you, and it's forever.
Yep.
And when I thought about that, and I just let that sink in for a while, just an extreme level of sadness overwhelmed me for a little while, and I had to snap out of it.
Yeah.
Wow. Really sink your
right.
heart.
Yeah.
So suicide is the next thing that we're going to cover here in under psychological, and you kind of address some of it. You were talking about how your friend committed suicide after having lots of discussions with him about being a preputial amputee.
Yeah. So
not necessarily the only factor, but that might make someone commit suicide, but it seems like it's certainly a strong factor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much that you can talk about with that. I think the damage that it causes to your relationships, your ability to connect, the physical damage probably is the worst aspect of it. So like for me, after going through this process, the worst part of it is the physical part that I'm missing. Although there was many years, and every single day I'm dealing with the psychological impact of it, which is also equally as devastating in many ways. And on top of that, it affects your relationships. It gives you, like you said, when you have your bodily autonomy ripped from you, it creates a framework in your life that you don't deserve to feel joy, right? So it not only can rob you of your sexual joy, but of things that just normal day-to-day activities that should be enjoyable as well. So I think all of those things on top of trying to reach out to people and being rejected consistently on a consistent basis kind of builds the potential for someone to commit suicide. That's kind of what I think.
I agree. I think that it's not just the fact that you're an amputee, but the fact that your harm is not being acknowledged by so many people, especially your family and friends. If you end up losing friends or family, or you become backseat with family or whatever because you're speaking out about it, that just gives you even more reason to just say, well, fuck it.
Exactly.
What point is living if I'm not going to be loved by my family? If my family and friends aren't going to listen to my pain and support me.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I have to say about suicide. Although, like, you could go down a lot of different topics with that, and everyone's different. So it's always hard to pinpoint, like, well, why exactly did this happen on that day? Why did he choose to do it now? Like, it's this kind of black hole that it keeps draining you to the point where you can't cope anymore. You have no more coping mechanisms left, and that's your final act that you can do for yourself. So
one of the things I try to do is frame it like a war wound. I entered a war right right out of the womb.
Yep.
And I got a war wound.
It's like
And,
the worst
I'm
day of
still
your
fighting.
life. That was the worst day of your life.
Exactly.
There's nothing worse that can possibly happen to you. So, pretty much.
Yeah. So I talk about my war wound.
Yeah.
It's like, I got shot right here. And, I was in this war for this reason or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm proud for fighting the war valiantly.
Yeah.
I wasn't a very good fighter then. I'm a good fighter now.
Yeah. And one thing I would want to encourage intactivists too is that sometimes it can be depressing that you don't get any support, but that is all the more reason why we need to be strong and do this work, because nobody else is going to do it. We're the only people who are going to do it. So it's super important that we keep going. So yeah.
Yeah, and on that line, it's there's intactivists that have been doing this for decades that are passing away, like Rosemary Romberg back in January, and we need to pass the baton.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need new blood.
Yeah.
All right, so the next thing is children. I'm drawing a blank right now how psychological children fit together with all this. Do you have any thoughts?
Psychological of children, like anything more specific?
Maybe I need to write down some notes about the children aspect of this.
Like how it affects a child, or?
Well, you were talking about having a friend or friends that were intact when you were a child.
Yeah.
And you were talking a little bit about how that affected you then.
I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on that. I don't think being intact makes you immune to trauma. I still think traumatic events can affect your life, but I think it makes it easier for you to cope with trauma.
Now I'm remembering why this comes up. One of the excuses quite often in the circumcision bingo is, "Oh, your child is going to be bullied."
Yeah.
Were you bullied?
Yeah.
Did you bully anyone that was intact?
Yeah. It's like, should kids really be running around looking at each other's penises anyways? Like, is that really the most normal? Like, I mean, I know it happens, but it's like, how often is that going to happen?
Yeah, there was one day I chaperoned with my son's class for a pool day.
Yeah.
And because I had the best background check of all the men that volunteered to chaperone, I was specifically asked to monitor the changing room by myself. So I had all these boys in there trying to change, and some were intact, some were not. One boy was bullied, but I don't think it had anything to do with his penis. Honestly. I mean, he was naked, but he fell, and part of it was that a lot of the boys were standing in line to try to get changed, and they were trying to change inside of stalls. There were only 2 stalls. It's like, guys, just change. It's no big deal. It's like you all have the same parts. It's get out of your shorts and put on some clothes and get it done over with. But they all wanted to stand in line so they could have some privacy. And this one slightly larger boy got in there and he leaned up against the door, and I was just on the side of the door, and the door popped open and he fell on his butt, and all the boys, they were always kind of picking on him beforehand, and then they, laughed at him and arrested him and all that. All the while, my boy was by himself. He wasn't in the crowd, and he didn't care about privacy, and he's intact, and he's changing, and no one's even paying any attention to him. So my boys have said that they have never been fully developed their penis.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of so the reason why I bring up the children part and the psychological thing is typically how they might be affected during childhood.
Yeah.
The next one is medical professionals. I don't assume you're a medical professional.
I mean, I'm not a professional, but both of my parents are doctors, so I've kind of grown up in that.
So yeah, I think you talked a little bit about that because you said that your parents have a good bit of influence on this. So what I think about is I've heard plenty of reports from medical professionals. Marilyn Minus is one of the most notorious because she got fired because she was basically against his practice on baby boys. So working in a place where this is happening when you're against it, I just can't. I couldn't personally do it. I'm uncomfortable going into hospitals as it is, but I will when I need to or my family needs to be cared for. One time I dropped off my mother. Yeah, I dropped off my mother-in-law for an MRI or whatever, and they didn't necessarily want me to be in there with her because of the pandemic and everything like that. So I brought all my butt-stained pants, went out to the corner, and protested while she was in there.
That's funny. That's more entertaining than just sitting around.
Yeah, I got plenty of medical professionals coming out of the building or walking across the street or whatever, and asking what this is all about.
That's funny. Well, I think
have your parents talked at all about how they do this?
They're veterinarians, so
okay.
It's not like they weren't involved. They never circumcised a human before, so themselves. So that kind of, I don't know, makes it a little bit easier for me to cope with, I guess.
Yeah.
But I just think the medical professionals are just so uneducated on so many things, and they have
just look at the textbooks. It's really sad.
They have no incentive to become educated. They're incentivized to stay ignorant. So I think that's just a big problem. And when you try to bring up new information to them, they have bigger fish to fry. Like it's just there's no reason for them to waste their time unless they actually care and actually want to do the right thing. But a lot of them they don't think about it.
Now, earlier last year, 2020, I went through a 2020 edition of a urology book and identified it's clearly slanted toward circumcision. They use the word circumcision a lot instead of postectomy or preputial amputation. And so I wrote a huge letter, a thick letter, copying and pasting this out of their book, saying, "Well, here's the problem with this and this and this and this." And then I reference studies and articles and stuff like that. So and then I sent it. There were eight editors of the book, and I managed to find and emailed and got responses from 7 out of 8 that they received the letter. I never got any thank you or anything, but just a receipt that they did get it. So yeah, it's really scary to look at the textbooks and see how much information is missing, particularly about genitalia, and not just male genitalia, but female genitalia too. There's a gal by the name of Jessica Penn. You can look her up. She's on Twitter. She's got a Medium, I think it's Medium blog and everything like that about it. And she even had a petition recently that looks like it's been quite productive, trying to get the gynecologists to improve the education system around the clitoris.
Yeah.
So in some ways, as much as the medical textbooks are bad for the male genitalia, it's even worse if what it looks like for female genitalia, because they don't even have the nervous system outlined for the clitoris. So that's and she got harmed from surgery at age 18.
Oh, wow.
And she blames the lack of medical education on it.
Yeah, the Doctors Opposing Circumcision has a really good video on just the basic anatomy of it. It's called like the prepuce.
Yeah, the information is out there, but whether the educational institutions are providing it or not is another issue.
Well, another problem too is that they've kind of stolen the word circumcision, because in ancient times, circumcision was never the amputation of the entire foreskin. Yeah, it was just a small cut at the end, and that's what they called circumcision, and they still call circumcision today. So people think they're following the Bible or whatever, but that's not even what they practiced. So
they can draw one drop of blood and call it circumcision.
Right,
the
exactly.
Word circumcised just means to cut in a circle when you look at the roots. Roots. So it's really, as far as I'm concerned, it's extremely unprofessional for medical professionals to use that term at all.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
I call that out on Twitter all the time. When people talk about circumcision, circumcising, whatever, it's like, huh? Cut it in a circle or your child? What?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
I've got this gift that I made that I usually have it behind me on the wall, but it's just the genital autonomy symbol that it's in a circle, and I cut the circle out, right? And it just says circumcised paper.
Circumcised paper.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And when people talk about banning circumcision, it's like, I like cutting in circles. So hopefully it gets people thinking, like, okay, I guess the word sucks. It's bad word.
Yeah.
Fix our verbiage.
That's why you say like prepuce amputation. How do you say it?
Prepuce, because it's your prepuce that's being removed.
That's a better, more accurate term.
Yeah. People that are pro cutters, they are like, oh, you're just using that term to be,
attention seeking or something.
Yeah, to blow it up or whatever. It's like, no,
not really.
To me, it's accurate.
It's just a description.
You're removing a body part permanently. That is an amputation.
Yeah, that's what they.
No, an amputation is remove a finger or arm or a limb or something like that.
It's like what? Yeah.
I can accept postectomy because it's kind of like an appendectomy or a lot of other things that would be an ectomy or removing. Part. If you want to use postectomy, okay, fine. I still like preputial amputation better. Okay, so the next thing under psychological is parent. So, you're a parent?
No.
Okay, yeah. How do you think your own parents have been psychologically impacted by this, or have you even talked to them much about it?
I mean, I've had some conversations with my mom about it, but not much with my dad. So what's the question? How do I think they've been affected by?
How do you think they're psychologically affected by this practice?
Well, I think there's no way around it. When you do something like that to a child, it's going to have consequences. Whether you accept that or you're aware of the consequences, I think it causes certain behavioral changes. There's the studies with the brain chemistry changes forever. There's a lot of theory, and that's why I think it needs to be researched more. So I could like speculate on stuff with my parents and stuff, but I don't really want to get into that. Yeah. But
since you're not a parent, maybe this doesn't really apply to you much. But
no, I think it applies, but it's yeah. I don't want to get too specific about anything. So yeah.
And then the last one under psychological is an intact man. Since you're not intact, I don't know how it applies to you. I haven't had interviews
Yeah.
how they are psychologically impacted by this, even though they're not cut, because they live in, a society or whatever, or they are around, fellow men that are, that does psychologically affect them.
They can feel pressured to get circumcised.
Yeah, I've heard of plenty of men that said that they felt ashamed or whatever.
Yeah, insecure about it.
Yeah. So yeah, they should.
Yeah.
They should consider themselves lucky stiffs.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the next big section is relationships.
Yeah.
And the first part is child-parent trust. Do you feel that that your trust of your own parents has been affected by this?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big problem. I think almost unavoidable. I think when you become consciously aware of all the information and stuff that's actually one of the biggest traumas and biggest horrors is not only did this horrible thing happen to me, but the people that I trusted most allowed that to happen to you. And I think that itself is very damaging to a lot of families and stuff. It's affected my relationship a lot. So I don't know. I think it's important to come to a place where you're not relying on your parents emotionally anymore, because when you do have that conversation with them, if they don't respond in a positive way, it can really affect you. So that's why I think it's important to do things like this, where you're talking with somebody who is going to understand, or some groups of people who will understand. And then maybe you can approach your parents in a more calm way, because you're not relying on them to like coddle you, I guess you could say. Because the truth is if your parents let that happen to you, it's kind of unlikely that they're going to have all that much sympathy for you, unless they're a regret parent or something, somebody who's really educated on the issue. So what I realized with my parents is they actually need to be educated. They actually need the basic anatomy, the basic psychological effects, and if you come at them with a very emotional message, they're less likely to actually research and get educated. And that's
they might just get defensive or whatever.
They just get defensive, and what they really need is to just watch some videos on it with an open mind and become educated. But in terms of just the trust and bond, yeah, I think that is 100% affected, and it's a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah. Well, we get into the mother-child bond down here.
Yeah.
A little bit, but, so let me just tell you my story. Maybe you'll have some more thoughts. But I didn't really bring it up with my parents because I didn't really blame my parents. Back in the 70s, there was little to nothing as far as information about how things work. And my own father was cut, and I think my grandfather was cut. So it was just a normal thing. Like 90-some% were being cut. I was born in a naval hospital, so it was, I think, like routine. I don't even know if my parents even consented to it. I haven't paid the money to dig up records or anything like that. But my nephew was about to be born, and I wanted to talk to my brother about the topic, and I thought that would be best to bring it up with him while having my parents in the room. So all four of us sat down around a table, and I explained to them how well, I first started out with my aim. What my aim is to help my brother understand the topic. That it was something I've been studying, and that my two sons were intact. And this was a couple years ago, so they were this point. And I tried to go into it as a very much non-blaming way. I wasn't really blaming my parents. I'm more blaming the medical industry, and I blame it all the way back to whoever it was that came up with the idea. First freaking place to cut off parts of genitalia.
Yeah.
But and the got the ball rolling, and more so the medical industry in the U.S. that really got wound up even more when they started acting like McDonald's. Hey, you want fries with that? Oh, you want a circumcision with that? Your baby's just born. Hey, you want to get him circumcised? Yeah, sure, why not? That's the way it happens in this country because of capitalism and all that. But I wanted to explain particularly to my brother, and I knew my mother and dad would hear about all this too. Maybe they can have a little sympathy or whatever, and maybe they'd back me up and convince my brother to keep his son intact. But I just went through a lot of like what we're doing here. Went through all the physical harm, particularly the Meowth Stenosis, which I was actually kind of surprised my parents didn't remember me having that problem. Particularly partly I think because my grandmother was the one that took me to the hospital to address it. I was staying with her for summer or whatever, and it was just a matter of, I guess there was a consent problem because my parents weren't there, as my grandmother said. But back then it was before heparin and all that, so I don't know. But somehow my parents didn't have any memory of the Meowth Stenosis piece, and I expected them now. Tight erections and all that too. So my dad did get a little defensive, just a little bit, but I was like, no, I'm not blaming you. You don't need to be defensive about this. I just want you to hear, the impacts, and hopefully maybe this will mean that you'll go forward, telling other people, don't do this to your child. It's not a good idea. It was a bad idea.
Yeah, I think that's about the healthiest way to go about it. If you can handle that sort of conversation, focus on just educating and not blaming, because blaming will always cause defense, or usually at least. Did your nephew remain intact?
What's that?
Did your nephew remain intact?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Oh, wow. You don't talk to your brother much?
No. Less and less these days.
So
that kind of goes back to we'll kind of get down that friend and family part of it. We were talking earlier about what were we talking about? We were talking about, I think, psychological suicide. We were talking about suicide, how family members and friends kind of like depart or block you or whatever about because you're talking about this topic. Things taboo, whatever. So we'll get down to the friend and family part and we'll talk more about that. I don't know. Honestly, though, I don't think I trust that my parents would have done any research, though, even if I was born today. And that's, I think Van Lewis and Ben Lewis were maybe protesting in 1969 or something like that before I was born, but with my parents writing.
Yes, definitely not.
Today with Brother K, Let's Say Man, Cockfight, Intaction, and all these other organizations protesting and trying to spread information, maybe it would have gotten to them today, but I doubt it because I don't know. I mean, hopefully young parents today are, spending enough time on social media so that or getting views of this. So today, I think the child-parent trust relationship thing will be a bigger issue than ever because today there's just no excuse to learn about this. Before saying yes to a doctor, but a lot of people still appeal to the authority of doctors. So if the doctor is pushing it, parents likely to go to it. I think Attack America recently did a study about 94% of hospitals are pushing it and pushing it hard. Asking half a dozen times or so.
Yeah.
Okay, so co-parenting. You're not a parent yet, so
No.
probably just skip on past that unless you have anything to say about it.
No, not really.
Mother-child bond. You did bring that up a little bit. You think that it does affect the mother-child bond?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how much it impacted me as like a baby or a child, but because I'm not aware of any of that. But certainly when you become aware of it, there's a huge trust issue that have to either work through or not. So it's kind of.
It seems that there's a lot of studies and ideas about the baby being attached to the mother right after birth, skin to skin contact and eye to eyes, all that stuff during the very first minutes, hours, and even already days to the mother. And my own wife was actually a little upset because she couldn't hold our oldest for the first couple hours after he was born because she had to have a little repair work done. And so I was the one holding our oldest, and he seems to have bonded to me a little bit more than his mom, and more so than his younger brother did, because his younger brother was with mom right away and stuck with her for a good while after. There was a lot more mother-child bonding time. And as I've said before, both of our sons are intact, so there wasn't any. The baby wasn't taken away for a period of time to get snip or nothing. And there's often talk about how the baby comes back and the baby is lethargic or whatever, won't breastfeed. Brother K even talks about how he didn't eat for a long time after he was born. Because he got snipped right out of the womb.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. My parents haven't really told me anything about that, so.
Do you know how soon after you were snipped?
I don't know. I'm assuming it was in the first day or two. Yeah. Because my mom was not in the hospital longer than like a day, so probably the first or second day.
I've heard of them trying to be so efficient about it. It's like sometimes they'll do it right there in the delivery room. Baby out, snip. Okay.
Yeah. That's
not just cut the cord, but cut that part down there on the penis too. Get it over with.
Just about.
Get it over to mom.
Yeah. They don't want you staying in the hospital any longer than you need to be.
Yeah, and that's become more and more common these days. They want to keep those beds free.
Yep.
Freed up, and insurance companies, they don't want to pay for your time in the hospital any longer than needed.
Yeah.
Okay, this is an interesting one. There's a video that I did where I discussed the potential connection between pedophilia and circumcision. Have you ever had any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I guess I have a lot of thoughts on that. I don't know how deep I want to go into that, but I definitely think circumcision can cause, all sorts of behavioral problems, and that includes sexual problems as well. Definitely include, extreme, fetishes or things like that you are trying to make up for the lack that you have, like the lack of bodily autonomy. Kind of creates a environment where you're always trying to get back what you lost, and that can kind of come out in a lot of different dysfunctional ways. So I'll probably just leave it at that, but that's kind of my thoughts on it. Yeah.
For me, I you can look at my channel sometime, but my thought was this has become a very common, very frequent this factor goes to Jessica Penn again. Women getting labiaplasty and reconstructive surgery after having babies or something like that to have a more tight vagina.
Yeah.
Question is, why do men, so frequently in the U.S., feel the need to have a tight vagina?
Oh yeah, well,
they're
because
missing something.
They won't feel anything. They won't feel anything. Yeah.
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 Because they don't have their own, their own parts to help give them pleasure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that might lead to desires to have a tight vagina, which young girls have.
Right.
Girls that haven't had babies.
Yeah.
So it's just a theory of mine. I have no data to back it up with or whatever, but I think that's a plausible theory, right?
I don't know. It's pretty easy to do your own thinking and come to your own conclusions. But I would say it would be great to have more research on early childhood trauma.
Yeah. What I worry about though is that even if we did do research or whatever, would it get squashed? Because I've heard of multiple cases where things have been found out that are horrible about this, or find out that this is horrible.
Yeah.
And the studies or whatever get thrown away or hidden or squashed or whatever.
I think Gregory Malchuk had an interesting comment the other day. He said, just the fact that we need information or appeal to authority to even have an opinion on this, I think is a big problem. It's like, this is just basic parenting instincts, that we should have as a culture to not do these things. So I don't like that we would even need research to stop this, but I don't know, maybe it would help some people if they were more scientifically aware of the trauma, because I'm sure it is very easy to prove, it doesn't take much. But as you said, it's very hard to get that information out.
Also, the question is even if we found more data or whatever that prove that this is horrible, I don't think that we need it. I mean, there's plenty of data out there that show this is harmful. There's
more than that.
Will the mainstream media take it and run with it?
Yeah, you can't rely on an external source to protect your own child. You just can't.
All right, so the next thing under relationships is doctor-patient relationships. Now, for myself, because doctors are self-performing this stuff and are not getting taught about this, I have a lack of trust for doctors.
Yeah.
Because if they aren't being honest or aren't learning about this particular topic, what else are they skipping out on or being untrustworthy about?
Absolutely. Because my parents were doctors, also my mom had cancer at a young age. I've always had a lot of health problems, been to tons of doctors for, therapists and physical problems. And like you said, they're not educated on a lot of topics, not just circumcision, but all sorts of health topics they're not educated on. And they have no incentive to become educated because they're basically pharmaceutical salesmen. When they sell those drugs, they make money. So, and they create side effects which require you to come back more. It's a huge cycle. So I'm a big believer in taking care of your health as much as possible on your own, and becoming educated on diet and exercise and any sort of natural healing. And I do think there are good doctors out there, but the majority of them, they don't take insurance. You have to pay out of pocket. And I think it is important, if you are going to the doctor, to get second opinions, second and third and fourth opinions, and try to find a doctor that you do trust and who's willing to listen to you. Because a lot of doctors they won't even listen to you. You'll come in, you'll say you're having symptoms, and they just won't believe you or whatever crazy reason they have to just get you out of that room. And you have to, if you're not aware of how the medical system works, it's easy to get trampled on. So you really have to be an advocate for yourself when you're dealing with the medical system.
Yeah. Sad, but that's true across the board. I mean, you take your car and go on mechanic,
Yes.
You trust the mechanic.
And I think most people who do trust doctors blindly, they probably haven't really had much experience with them. So I don't know.
Sad to say, I trusted them too much.
Yeah.
Okay, then the last thing, which we kind of touched on earlier, is friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
In a world where genital cutting wasn't a thing, there wouldn't be any reason for this to come up and be any kind of wedge between between us.
Yeah, I was actually talking with that to my wife today. I'm just like, life is so difficult because there's all of these things that are like you said, putting a wedge between us when we're just supposed to be in communities, be happy, be healthy, and supporting each other. But there's such a I don't know, so much information, such an information war, propaganda, and all this nonsense that makes it hard to maintain relationships with even your own family, and it's a tough thing to deal with.
So, I think you have anything else to say? I mean, do you have any personal experiences you want to share about your relationships with friends and family about this topic?
Not really. The one thing I would say is that, and I kind of touched on this before, is that it's important to find people who you can connect with, because your family doesn't have to be by blood. Like you can make family anywhere. That's what I think. That's what I would encourage people is like, don't just settle for people who are not going to acknowledge you. You gotta find people who you can be open with.
For me, it's still it makes me sad that I don't have relationships with some friends and family that I used to, because of this issue. They don't talk to me about it or whatever.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
Okay, then on to the next thing. It's listed as FGM, female genital mutilation, or female genital cutting, or female circumcision, however you want to frame it, or whatever. The reason why I have it on here is because I believe, and I think a lot of other people believe, that the continuation of male circumcision perpetrates the continuation of FGM. And you can talk about FGM both from a non-consensual side as well as a consensual side. There's actually a certain amount of FGM that occurs in the U.S. that is consented to. Supposedly, at least in a certain number of states, it used to be a federal law that got struck down by the Constitution. It used to be against the law at a federal level, and when it's non-consensual. What are your thoughts on it?
So, my thoughts on FGM. I don't know. Like, you want to rephrase the question at all, or?
So it's more not just about thoughts on FGM, but more on how male circumcision is connected to or perpetrates the continuation of FGM.
I think it's a slippery slope when you allow, when you allow that into a society, it's always going to be a slippery slope as to what's next. I don't know if that's the best way to wording it. The only real thoughts I have on FGM, though, is that I feel as if people kind of just go along with whatever the authorities tell them. So they kind of grow up and they hear about these organizations against FGM and whatever the WHO rejects it and all that. So they, of course, they believe that it's bad. But if they say, oh, circumcision's a-okay, they don't question that either. So what I've kind of come to realize is that just because people are quote unquote against FGM, they're not really educated at all. They kind of they were just told that, so that's what they believe. If society,
that's the same case whether you're talking about male circumcision or female circumcision or even intersex normalization tumors.
So if society supported FGM, all of those people that support circumcision would probably support that as well. So I don't know. I feel like there's a huge barrier just to get people educated, and even on FGM, people need to be educated, because although they might say, yeah, that's wrong, they may not have a lot of good reasons as to why that it's wrong, or they may not be educated on anything about it. So I don't know. That's in terms of like continuing to allow child abuse, living in a culture where that's accepted, I think creates just all sorts of problems. Also, I think it creates, increased suicide, increased drug addiction, all these relational problems that we're talking about. It's just it's a big black hole in society. It's a big like mark on society, and it's almost impossible to like calculate all the damage that it causes. So we've talked about, could cause pedophilia, could cause increased rape, all sorts of horrible things. So I don't know, that's kind of where I would leave it.
Okay. So that kind of leads on to the last thing. You were talking about damages to society. I added social productivity to this lesson. You actually, in your Intact Radio show that you did, you actually brought this up a little bit, and I kind of point this out multiple times. It's kind of ironic that part of the idea of cutting off part of the genitalia is to help people focus on being closer to God, or being more productive, going back to work, and and just focusing on don't make a baby and then get back to work, type of thing, or slavery. Sometimes people even fall, the mark of a slave. The idea is to focus on work and not sexual activities or whatever, by cutting out part of the genitalia to reduce sexual drive. Yet there's guys like you and I that have become less socially productive. Not working as well, or or we get depressed or whatever,
right?
Because of this, so we're not working as much.
For me personally, I feel like I would be much more productive if I was whole and normal, and I would be more motivated to have a good life and work hard. But I don't know if that's the normal, or I don't know if I'm in the minority concerning that. Like my dad, my grandpa, they just worked nonstop, and they never thought about it for 1 second. So, but I think the book Marked in Your Flesh has a lot of good historical information on the people who promoted circumcision, or like the real circumcision, the full circumcision, you could say, the modern day circumcision. They had all sorts of thoughts on what that would cause socially and behaviorally in men. And it's really shocking when you read some of those early historical writings about how they viewed the topic. So I would suggest that if you really want to learn more about that, you read Marked in Your Flesh, and read some of the excerpts from the early circumcision promoters. And when I say early, I mean like ancient, thousands of years ago, what their thoughts were on it.
I just happen to have the book.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yep.
So for those of you that want to read, this is a good book.
Yeah, it's a long book. There's a lot of information in that book.
Yeah, and he happened to show up on the American Circumcision documentary too.
Yeah.
I got a whole library of books now on the topic.
Nice.
I've got a lot of reading to do.
Yeah.
So, but imagine, if this genital cutting thing wasn't happening in the world, what we would be doing with our time instead?
Yeah, we'd have a lot.
Doctors would be spending more time healing people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys like you and I would be spending more time, I don't know, making cars or fixing up computers or writing great computer software.
Yeah. No, we got to spend all our time with this. Hey, but it is what it is. Like, this is where we're at, and this is what needs to be done. So, like, I even had my mom tell me once, she's like, you shouldn't focus on it so much, but it's just like, maybe this is exactly what I need to be focusing on. Because if we're not past this as a society yet, maybe it takes a whole lifetime of, toiling over this issue to move past it, unfortunately. Yeah. It's not the way I would want it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think that if genital cutting in the world stopped yesterday, then yeah, it'd be great. I'd definitely do something different.
You do something else, yeah.
But I keep waking up every morning thinking, well, there's another tens of thousands of children getting their genitals cut today without a medical need. They get harmed. I got to do something about it.
Yeah.
I can't not.
Intactivists have nothing to gain from doing this work. There's no personal gain from it, other than wanting to stop it happening to someone else. Like, there's not much financial gain. There's not much, you just get socially ostracized. And personally, it's very hard. It's a very hard topic to spend all your energy on. But, so it is what it is.
I work less than I used to. I make less, per hour than I used to. I've dumped 5 digits of my own money into activities and stuff to try to educate people. I have a video that I run as an advertisement on YouTube for attorneys for the rights of the child.
Wow.
Because I wanted to keep it short, and I wanted it to just spike people's thoughts about the topic.
Yeah.
And all it is, hey, if you think that you were botched, contact Mark Law or something. I was just, something really simple, and I was standing in the blood thing, outfit and all that. So, just an eye catcher and an ear catcher, and something to get people thinking about the topic.
Have you seen that?
You need to plant seeds to get people to go down that rabbit hole.
Have you seen the circumcision as a fraud YouTube video?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a good video.
Yeah.
It's really short, and I was like, man, there's like hundreds of billions of dollars in, I don't know the word, malpractice lawsuit or whatever, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, who knows? Hopefully, maybe this will be the next, huge lawsuit, like what happened with Jordan keeps bringing it up, the cigarette companies.
Yeah.
But it's a little different. You can't just sue a handful of cigarette companies. You have to. Who are you going to sue? I don't know. Tens of thousands of doctors.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of hospitals across the world.
Yeah.
Country, whatever. I don't know how.
There's no.
How that lawsuit will be written up.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know how much you've checked in to me, but I've got a blog about it. But there's 3 things that I did about this issue for my own case. First, I started off with writing a criminal complaint and filed it with the sheriff's department of the county where I was born, which ended up getting just passed on to the Navy. That's, I guess they don't have any authority on Navy ground where the Naval Hospital was. And then I filed a tort claim against the Navy, and they shut that down or whatever, particularly because it's like, well, you only get 2 years. Like, well, 2 years after it happened, I was not even 2 years old. So, yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not realistic. And then I took it to federal court and filed a federal court claim, and gave a judge and the federal prosecutor, federal attorney some work to do. You can look at my blog article, and there's you can look at the paperwork that came out. But I don't know. You can clearly tell that there was definitely some work put into it.
Yeah.
It created a little bit of pain. I was hoping that maybe that would go up the chain somehow, and maybe they would rethink about doing this in military hospitals. Because, like, as far as I understand, like in Australia, they stopped allowing the procedure in publicly funded hospitals. It still happens in that country, but it's not done by their government. So the government is out of it that way. Whereas in the U.S., our government is involved, not officially from the looks of it, but they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't found anything that says, yeah, this is allowed or this is required or anything within the federal government or federally funded hospitals. So my next attempt after that was to reach out to the Inspector General's office, and I've suggested to several others to also write to the Inspector General's office and ask that they stop the waste of our tax dollars on doing this procedure.
Yeah.
Within federally funded hospitals.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a step forward, right?
And get insurance to not cover it would be good.
Yeah, many states do not cover it on their on state-funded insurance, which is good. And that seems to be going back and forth. And I had to deal with started tackling I think North Carolina issue on that recently because someone tried to sneak it into the bill. I don't know exactly what the status of that is, but yeah, it should infuriate everyone, whether you're, unless you're really pro or think that really, the medical benefits are all that great, that tax dollars is going towards that procedure.
Yeah.
Something that's effectively a cosmetic procedure.
Right.
And I can understand maybe like fixing a cleft lip, but to me that's a therapeutic procedure. It's not just cosmetic at all.
Yeah.
Because you're fixing something that is a birth defect.
Right.
Foreskins are not birth defects.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, David, you got anything else to add to this?
I think that was good. I appreciate you having me on, and yeah.
You too. All right, thank you so much, David. Have a great night.
Have a good night. Thank you. All right, what's going on, guys? What is going on? Let's see all the comments. 5 people watching. Ooh, we got a lot of comments here. We got Gregory, Bean, Ab, Bolsecker. You as Scandinavian? It looks like a Scandinavian name. Matthias K. Massey, you're back. What's up? Matthew K. We had a decent amount of people joining today. That's cool. Thank you guys. Appreciate that. Happy gay. See you in Jordan's YouTube comments a lot. Yes, I am Swedish. Yeah, my wife is Danish. Yep. Let me read through the comments here. I want 50 years back is no small point. Yep. A brown ring at the scar line is strongly indicative of the Gomco clan. Well, guess that was my tool of choice. Hoping for 4-gen success to come soon. There is study to suggest that the penetration force required by circumcised men is orders of magnitude. Oh yeah, absolutely. Gomco clamps were aggressively marketed by the Aaron Goldstein and the Goldstein Medical Company in medical journals in 1940s and 1950s. Cool. There should be basically no skin on the penile skin sheath whatsoever. The penile skin sheath is devoid of hair follicles. Oh, okay. You mean hair. No hair on the penile skin sheath. Did anyone notice the progress of 4-gen advanced recently? They seem to have obtained approval from the ethics committee now. Cool. If your pee hole is smaller than about half the thickness of glands, you almost certainly have Meowth Stenosis. It's almost exclusively a pathology of circumcised men. Well, that's just another reason for medical malpractice and the lack of consent and lack of information and all that stuff. Brendan Murata's film is free on BitChute now. Yeah, nice. The frenular artery is important for the proper development of the urethra. If it gets destroyed by circumcision, metal stenosis can develop. The pudendal nerve. Circumcision. You wouldn't want your kid to be bullied, right? Well, we'll just bully him. That way the bully doesn't have to do anything. Boys don't all have the same parts, unfortunately. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Oh, probably what you're saying is circumcision removes, has a varying degree of different parts that it can or can't remove, may or may not remove. He needs to be protesting at the local middle and high schools outside churches after the doctors don't care and are empowered not to care. Yeah. Maybe reaching parents is a more effective tool than the doctors are already they're lost souls at this point. What is this list of questions? Is it David's? Can I read it later somewhere? It was actually, John Atkinson. It was his list of questions. I think you can find it on his Facebook page, Circumcision Harms Documentary. But it is a private group, so yeah. Okay. All right, let's roll in here. What word did Atkinson say at the start of this topic? Oh, it was pedophilia. What does circumcision cause, an increased rate of pedophilia? That was his question. I missed the start of the conversation. Circumcision is a bigger mystery than COVID-19 lockdown. Yeah, when it comes down to brass taxes, your trauma as a newborn baby is where it all That's where it all leads to, boys. That's where it all leads to. It ain't about logic or facts. No data will ever swing the discourse on this issue. The Sorrells force sensitivity study and more. Sorrells is still in shock. Yeah, I know. Pure evil. That's what it is. No intact men I've talked with disagreed to Sorrells' findings. It's mind-blowing that it didn't make a difference. But the doctor's TV show said that there's no difference between circumcised men. It's the same. You don't lose anything. You don't lose any sensation. You believe them, right? Doctors not believing patient reports at face value is the reason why a lot of illnesses have a time to diagnose this. Yeah, of course they don't. They're too arrogant to believe that you could know more than them. They've been educated for 16 years. Okay, capitalism worsens MGM because capitalism is linked to Islam, Judaism, and Abrahamic laws. Sure, I would believe it. The Soviets forbid it. The pagans, aka Nazis, criminalized it. True. I've been fascinated with this particular topic for some time. You can read Marked in Your Flesh. That has some information about like the Romans not allowing circumcision, and there's all sorts of groups throughout history that you would be completely shunned if you circumcised, if you were part of that group that wanted to circumcise. It's kind of hard to get the historical information, but it's out there. Arab oil won the war against Germany and Japan. Without the Islamic petrodollar, America would never be strong. Yeah, well, Japan was completely insane for attacking. If you believe that they attacked Pearl Harbor, like they knew they had no oil reserves, and they knew they didn't have the reserves to win the war. So they were just, I don't know, like what the Japanese were thinking. They were so angry that the U.S. was able to go to foreign countries and take resources, but they weren't, because they started invading China, and then like international law got in the way, and like they got really angry because they weren't treated fairly on an international level. Do you have any sources that Germans and Soviets banned circumcision? I wouldn't know about that, but it's possible. I'm German. It's unfortunately not banned here. I will send you the site someday. There needs to be personal gain for activists, which is why I use the prospect of tissue regeneration as a hook to get people involved. Yeah, it would help if there was personal gain, but unfortunately, there's not much right now. Kyle Malachik. Have you got any contact info, Gregory? I've been trying to get in touch with you. The tobacco industry has a ton of parallels. How can I contact you, Gregory? You give me so much hope. I need time to respond to my channel comments. America isn't secular, it's a hoax. Y'all should get Gregory to host a show. He's pretty amazing. Got some killer ideas. Go watch all his videos. Yeah, I mean, he's welcome to come on whenever. Anyone's welcome to come on. This show, there wasn't any call-ins today because it was just, I was just streaming the interview. But every other stream, you guys are free to call in, and please spread the link when we are live streamed. Please spread the link to any social media platforms that you think might be interested, and please join the call. That would be great. I am from Egypt, origin no real Swede, therefore I'm cut. Oh, that sucks. I migrated here. Yeah, a lot of Middle Eastern people are moving to Scandinavia. Real Swedes are all intact. True. This has to stop. All right, guys. Thank you for all the comments. I really appreciate that. Please spread the link. Please try to get this out here, and please call in. This show is really, really boring when you guys don't call in. But I appreciate all the comments. It helps. You can always link me like videos or stuff that you want me to cover on here to give me some content to talk about. But other than that, I'm going to go to bed. It's 11 o'clock. It was a good stream. Thank you guys for showing up.